Welcome to the 6:30 City Council meeting, September 6th. And at this time, we will stand for the pledge and prayer. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Let's pray. Dear Heavenly Father God, we just come to you, Lord God, just praising your name, Lord, and thanking you for what you do for us, Lord God. God, I thank you for the healing that you have done for Marcia, Lord, that we've seen such incredible healings, Lord, and I'm so thankful for that, Lord, and I just praise you for that, God. And I thank you, Lord, for the city, Lord, and for all the employees, Lord, and the council, Lord, that we would just continue to work for you, Lord, and just do everything to our power, Lord, to lead your kingdom, Lord. And I just thank you for the work that Garrett and Brandon and Scott and just the whole staff has done on the budget, Lord. I just praise you, Lord, that we are in the situation that we're in this city, Lord, and that we are financially doing really well, Lord. And I just praise you for that, and I thank you for it, Lord. And I just ask that you bless every single one that has had a part in it, Lord. And I just thank you for all you do for us, and I just ask these things in Jesus' name. Amen. Amen. And then at this time, we'll have questions and comments from any citizen.
Yes, I'm Judy Flanders, and I'm here to give you a little bit of an update on two organizations that you generously support. When I was here making my report about the Concert Association, we had not set our schedule yet because things were really in flux. But now you have a brochure. This is what it is. And our first concert is next Monday night. And for those of you who loved Kenny Rogers, this is the band. This isn't just a group of musicians that got together and decided to play Kenny Rogers songs. These are the people that toured with him for 40 years.
Oh, wow.
And it was organized by his longtime friend Don Gatlin, and he's going to be here leading this. So I didn't want you all to miss out on it. Next Monday night at the high school auditorium at 7 o'clock. Please come.
All right.
I think you'll enjoy it. And then I brought you some information about the Cowboy Poetry and Song event that the Friends of the Museum are doing on the 17th of September at the Dome. We are so excited to have that space to be able to use because we had outgrown our previous locations, and we're really looking forward to it. And I think a lot of people particularly want to come just to see the Dome. But we have added on some performers this year that we haven't had before. Andy Hedges and Strawberry have been here before, but Bridget and Johnny Reedy and Joel Nelson are new people that we have not. Andy put us in contact with them. These are people that are well known in the cowboy poetry and music scene, and so I think it's going to be really good. And the important thing is we want everybody to come, but you need to get your ticket in advance from the museum so that we know how many people are going to be there because we're serving a meal.
Okay.
Thank you. Hope you all can come.
All
Thank
right.
you.
Thank you, Judy. Thank you so much. And if there's no one else, we'll move on to the consent items. And if there's not any questions or anything, I'll entertain a motion on the consent items 5 through 9.
I'll make a motion. I'll make a motion. We approve consent items 5 through 9.
Second. All in favor? And it passes. Item 10, consider and take appropriate action to cast a vote in the TML Health Benefit Pool Board of Trustees Region 2 election. Mr. Spradlin.
So, we do provide health benefits to our employees through the TML Health Pool. For the longest time, it was the Intergovernmental Health Pool, but they've kind of rebranded. And so part of that is one of the reasons that we have continued to stay with TML over the years is that, you know, being a nonprofit pool, we do get to vote for representation in what coverage and how that money is spent. And so TML, the way that the health board works is that each region elects a representative. And so this year there were 2 candidates. The first is Joe Price, who is the current board member who filled Eddie's spot when Eddie retired. And the second was Councilman Loftus, who was nominated by the city of Higgins without anybody asking if he wanted the job. So apparently he made a good impression on Higgins at some point. But of course, the TML board is it's probably one of the more involved boards of all those that are out there. And of course, prior to that, Pete had declined the nomination, but we didn't get that letter to them in time to get his name removed from the ballot. But other than that, we just need unless y'all disagree with Pete's decision to withdraw, we just need a motion to cast our vote for Joe.
Any
You need a
comment?
motion real quick.
Yeah.
I think you should probably make it. Yeah.
I move that the city board cast its vote for the TML Health Benefit Pool Board of Trustees Region 2 for Joe Price.
Second.
All in favor? And it passes.
Good call.
Item 11, consider and take appropriate action to cast a vote for the TML Intergovernmental Risk Pool Board of Trustees in place 6, 7, 8, and 9. Mr. Spradlin.
So like our health coverage, we get insurance coverage from another pool, which is the TML Intergovernmental Risk Pool. This is workers' comp, property, vehicles insurance. So unlike TML Health, TML IRP has place on the board, and then all members vote for all places. So you can see I included in this the list of everybody that was nominated for each position, and then we have some recommendations from the staff in place 6, 7, 8, and 9. Of course, you know, y'all all should be familiar with Mr. Kaufman, who is the city manager in Granbury, was the city manager in Borger. And place 9 is Opal Malden Jones. I'm not for sure if you've met her. She is one of the officers of the TMPA, not TMPA, TCMA. I've been a member of too many boards with too many acronyms.
Yeah.
But I have sat with her at several different events and stuff, and quite impressed with her. And the other 2 I don't know. However, I kind of suggested based on their regional location so that we didn't have one particular region in the state representing all those places. But I entertain any other options. And of course, feel free to, if you know somebody else on that list that you think would do better than who we suggested, feel free to.
Anyone have anything?
Not.
If not, I'll entertain a motion.
I move to cast the city of Borger's votes in the TML IRP Board of Trustees election to Allison Hayward in place 6, Mary Dennis in place 7, Chris Kaufman in place 8, and Opal Madeline Jones in place 9.
Second.
And all in favor? And it passes. Item 12, consider and take appropriate action to approve on final reading ordinance O-008-22, setting the combined tax rate for the fiscal 2023 budget year at 71 cents.
0.71 cents.
0.71.
Might get a little step on the 71 cents.
0.71. And that's Mr. Spradlin.
I don't have much to say on this. We introduced it to have the presentation last week. We will cover it a little bit in the budget presentation again and a few items, but I'd answer any questions that you might have.
Went over it many times. Anyone have anything? And if not, I'll entertain a motion.
I move to approve on final reading ordinance 0-008-22, adopting a combined tax rate of 0.710000 cents per $100 valuation.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And it passes. Item 13, receive a presentation on the fiscal year 2023 proposed operating budget, conduct a public hearing, and then consider and take appropriate action to approve on final reading ordinance O-009-22, adopting the fiscal year 2023 operating budget. Mr. Spradlin.
So for the last several months, staff and council have been, working to finalize this. You received the draft of budget at our last meeting, but we delayed the proposal or the presentation because we did a presentation on the tax rate last week, or excuse me, last council meeting. It's actually been 3 weeks to kind of spread things out. And like I do for all of these presentations, I do like to just remind everybody that we've got a pretty good financial transparency website on our page on our website at www.borgertx.gov, and then you just click financial transparency. All of these documents, past budgets, past audits, expenditure listings, financial reports, pretty much the same information that the council gets is out there for everybody's review. It is pretty quite detailed, and lots of information. We definitely don't try to hide anything. As we kind of talk about that, we were looking at a pretty drastic increase in appraised values in the city this year. And I think most everybody probably saw that when they got their appraisal from the appraisal district. And I know that definitely got a little bit of concerns going when they saw their appraisals go up. But remember, appraisals, it's just a part of what your tax bill is. So the next part of that is the actual rate. And so the no new revenue rate for the city of Borger, based on that appraisal, is 0.710323. So if you look at what we've done with the tax rate over the last several years compared to what has happened with the appraised values, we've actually come down more than the appraisals have gone up. So our citizens are still seeing an actual tax decrease over the last 4 years. So again, last year's tax rate was 0.807105. The no new revenue rate is 0.710323, and the voter approval rate, that's the rate that we could go up to without having to have an election, is 0.931193. So again, our proposed rate is 0.71, which is below the no new revenue rate of 0.710323. That's broken down into an M&O, a maintenance and operation tax rate of 0.54. That's the revenue that goes into the general fund to offset actual operations of the city. And I will remind everybody that the property tax revenue in the city general fund, we'll see that in a minute, is less than 17% of our total revenue. The money we collect from property tax will not even cover the budget of the police department or the fire department in its entirety. So that is just one piece of all of our revenue. So we do continue to be mindful of what we use that tax revenue for and trying to be consistent with our citizens. The INS rate, the interest in sinking or the debt rate, is 0.165. And of course, that is earmarked for our debt payments. That includes the fire station renovation, the police station renovation, and the municipal court renovations, and those type of projects. So overall, that's almost a 10-cent decrease over last year's effective rate or total rate, and it's just a hair under the no new revenue rate. So this is actually an official tax decrease, even with the increase in appraisal. And so what that means for the actual impact on a homeowner, you can see the comparisons here. So the tax rate, we actually reduced the tax rate this year by 12%. That's a pretty substantial reduction. The average appraised value was up 18%. Our average tax for the average homeowner will be up 3.83%. So you can see that we did a pretty good job at reducing the impact of those higher appraisals. And then our total tax levy, the amount we're getting, is 0.64% higher than what we levied last year. And if you wonder how that is with the fact that the rate's going down so much, you can see there at the bottom that we had almost $5 million in new property hit the tax rate. So that's actual property that wasn't there before that we get to realize that increase. So that new development has allowed us to reduce the burden on our existing taxpayers by offsetting some of that loss. So we've been able to do an almost 10-cent reduction without major impacts on our revenue. And of course, we're excited to see some of the other development going on. So we hope to see that continuing for a couple of years. So when we talk about revenue, the general fund revenue that we budgeted is $16,900,781. This is an increase of 1.63% over last year. So you can see that we're trying to do a pretty good job of keeping expenditures and revenue in line. Overall, that's a 3.9% decrease in property tax revenue. The percentage difference is there because we don't budget for 100% collection. So the previous slide is if everybody paid 100% of their collections. We are budgeting a 14.95% increase in sales tax revenue over our originally budgeted amount last year. There again, I've mentioned that throughout the year, and as we increase sales tax, the more you shop local, the more you get delivered local, the more we can offset that property tax revenue. And it does also include a 4.72% increase in industrial district contracts. This is the last year of our existing contracts, so those will be negotiated again later this summer. In the water and sewer fund, we're budgeting $12,860,615. This is a decrease of 2.97% over our amended budget. We are decreasing over the amended just a little bit because we do have a big turnaround planned at Phillips next year, and so while that turnaround is going on, they, reduce the amount of water they take. So we're trying to kind of take that into consideration. When we talk about fees, the amount we charge people for services provided, we have very few fee changes proposed in this budget. We do include a 50-cent increase in the solid waste fee to offset the increase that our contract with Pampa for disposal has. So that's the only noticeable fee that most people will see is 50 cents a month. Water rates, sewer rates, everything else is staying the same. We're definitely, at the council's direction and staff's very well of the impact of inflation on everybody, so we did try to keep at least the city's impact as minor as we could. So 50 cents on your standard bill is like 1/2 of 1%. So considering the inflationary average is closer to 9% right now, I think we've done a good job with that and still meeting the service needs going forward. There is another ordinance following this for the fee schedule, and we'll talk a little more detail about some of the other minor fees, but there are no other major changes. When you look at the general fund detailed revenue, you can see the little decrease there in ad valorem taxes. Sales tax over the years has definitely continued to go up and help support what we need to support without the increase in property tax along with the industrial districts. We are budgeting an even water fund transfer in the same amount as we did last year. You can get the breakdown of the water sewer revenue. There you can see that we're pretty well spread out, 12,800,000. And then we do have the special funds and the capital funds. When we look down at capital funds, when we get over to the expenditure side, and we'll talk more about that, I've got a slide about that, but you will see that capital expenditure outweighs the capital revenue because we did issue debt and had significant grant revenue in this current fiscal year, which we have not spent yet. And that'll be shown in a later slide. So on the expenditure side, the general fund is $16,900,781. They are balanced, both the water and the sewer fund. This is an increase of 4% in operating expenses over last year, and the largest increase in that is the salary realignment. If you remember, we implemented that a couple months ago to help offset some of the needs of our impact of inflation on our employees. But that takes our 5-step pay scale and consolidates the pay grades and provides 7 steps, which allows us to give a little more movement and longevity for our city employees. In the water sewer fund, our total expenditures are $12,860,000, which is balanced. That's a decrease of 19.76% of last year. But if you remember, we transferred $3.8 million into the capital water sewer capital fund last year to fund the Northwest Wellfield expansion, and that's that difference. So we budgeted that as an expense last year, but it was a one-time expense, so that's why there was a reduction. So that money is sitting in the capital fund, so we don't need that expense again this year, so that's offsetting that. You can see by department here the impacts. You'll notice some of the bigger reductions in administration, is in accounting, which is we've reduced when we combine the HR position and the payroll position, that reduced some. In administration, that's actually the election equipment. If you remember, we bought new election equipment for the first time, and longer than Stella probably should have put it off, but we did have to get that last year, and so that is the reduction there. Hazard mitigation is reduced from our amended budget. We did amend it. Of course, we had a very severe wildfire season this year, so we'll see how that goes. I will say that we're $133,000 over our projected revenue. So we budgeted this year $200,000 for contract fire services. We're at a little over $300,000 already this year. Of course, that's because a lot of those responses were TIFMAS responses and reimbursed by the state. So that's the one department that's always kind of the hardest to budget, but it does have a revenue offset for most of its expenses. And so I just did want to kind of point that out as why we were high this year, and going back low next year, our revenue was higher as well to offset that cost. You also see the big reduction in municipal court as we eliminated the city marshal's position and eliminated an admin assistant position over there and moved them around. So municipal court is now back down to 2 full-time employees and the part-time judge. The vehicle service center, we eliminated one of the mechanics, so we eliminated a position there, which is the 15% there. And then, of course, building standards, it's a 100% decrease because we're combining that with code enforcement, if you recall. And that's why if you go up to code enforcement, you see a 47% increase because it really hasn't changed much. We just moved them into that department, so that offsets those. Water and sewer is a little more consistent. You will see increase in wastewater treatment is for a Bobcat, so they're buying some capital out of their operating expenses, and we'll see that when we get into another slide on that. And then again, our special and capital funds, both on the income and the expenditure side. The biggest change there is you will see the Economic Development Fund, and so as we consolidate the EDC into city financial structure, that has added that fund and it is accounted for there. Then you will see the bigger expenditures in the Capital Improvements Fund. So if you notice, that's $13.2 million in capital expenditures budgeted next year. A lot of that revenue was received this year. In the Water Sewer Fund, that's $3.8 million for the 2 new wells in the Northwest Well Field. And the Transportation User Fund, that's a little over $4 million for the 10th Street reconstruction, which should start shortly. In the Capital Construction Fund, that's a bunch of different projects that we've got started, and it also includes a significant amount for housing incentives. And most of that revenue was the $3 million in coronavirus local fiscal recovery funding that we received. And then 1.6 in the Capital Equipment Fund, that's our light duty vehicles and ongoing expenses there. So I think the part that kind of matters is when we talk about that is revenues versus expenditures. This chart, you'll see that the general fund and the water sewer fund are balanced along with all the special revenue funds. And you will see that that capital fund is where the expenditures outpace the revenue. But when you look at our impact to fund balance, so see that the general fund's fund balance in 2019 was $3.7 million, and we're anticipating ending the fiscal 2023 budget at $7.2 million. This does include that increase in reserve requirement from 25% to 28%, which is $4.7 million, which leaves $2.5 million over that required revenue, which will go to fund our 5-year capital improvement plan. In the water sewer fund, of course, you will see that balance was 5.9 in 2019. It's going back down to 5.9 in 2023. It got up to 8.7, but remember, we did move $3.8 million from reserves into capital to fund 2 new wells without requiring any debt. So the council's been pretty, I think, involved in that loop, and that's been the desire to build that fund up to keep expanding those water infrastructure as needed. And then as you'll see, really the impact down there on the capital funds, where if you look at the charts and stuff, it looks like we're spending $10 million more than we have. It's not exactly the case, because if you look at the estimated 2022 totals, the water sewer capital has got $3.8 million in it, therefore earmarked for those plans. So we'll be spending that down to about $1,500. The capital construction fund has the $3.3 million, spend that down to $761. The transportation user fund, $4 million. That was that bond issue. That'll go down to $710. It'll eventually all go away, but we don't anticipate the entirety of the project to be completed in next budget year, depending on where it is. And then the capital equipment fund is the one that's kind of up in the air right now. We have 10 vehicles that we ordered for fiscal 2022 that still have not been delivered. Half of them are at least under construction, but they likely won't hit this fiscal year. So that fund will end up with a higher fund balance carrying over, but then we'll have the expenses next year. But if you see, we're anticipating ending the budget with a reserve of 17.4 in all funds. That is still up over $1 million from where we were in 2019 at 16.6. So in 2020, if you remember, we issued the debt for the dome between 2020 and 2021. That was the $7 million debt there, plus the $2 million in the venue fund. So that's why we got up so much. And then now we're just slowly kind of bringing that down into what is more a normal level. So we are investing in capital projects, but our overall unrestricted reserves are still going up. They just are down from what they were last year, which was just high because we had project delays. When we talk about personnel in the general fund, we did reduce the city marshal position. We reduced an administrative assistant in the municipal court. We reduced the payroll clerk by combining those duties with the new HR coordinator. We reduced a mechanic position at the vehicle service center, but then we increased a police sergeant for a new SRO position that, is being offset by payment from BISD. And then by moving the EDC over, we actually gained their 2 employees as employee counts, although they're funded out of their own funds, so that didn't impact any of the funding. And then we have added another $10,000 in the code enforcement part-time line item as we continue to try to focus on alley cleanup and some of those other efforts. In the water sewer fund, we added the citizen support service specialist, which is what we call that single point of contact. That's Linda out in the foyer. We're slowly getting her stuff kind of ready. There's a lot of things in the move there, but she's at least there to greet you when you come in the door, and I'm excited to see how that will increase our customer service as we get kind of the technology pieces and all that stuff wrapped up. And then in our compensation program, we did do the salary realignment, which consolidated pay grades and increased from the 5 to 7 steps. And now each step is equally divided with 2.5% between each step and the hourly pay grades, and then 2% in the executive pay grades. And so we also did budget increases in part-time salaries, knowing that we're going to have to address those as inflation takes hold as well. We did originally budget a $40 per month increase in defined contribution for health insurance. And of course, we talked about that a little earlier, that our rates came in much higher than anticipated. So we'll be doing some budgetary controls to make sure that we're able to increase that. We will actually be giving each employee $815 a month starting in 2020, calendar year 2023, which is when the new plans go into effect. So that is actually an increase of $75 a month. And so,
And on the distribution of the, 5 to 7, that didn't, we also, most every position was was a raise.
right, with the exception of one position that was a minimum of a 3% increase in salary, we also continued to fund their step. So the salary realignment gave them at least 3%, and then they still kept their anniversary date for their next step, which would be 2.5%.
Okay.
So for the most part, there's one exception to this rule, but for everybody else, you were guaranteed at least a 5.5% increase in your salary next year, and some more. It hit the middle supervisors more because our higher pay grades were pretty good, and the lower ones came up just a little bit. And then, of course, as we added those steps out there, it pushed everybody else up. So mid-level supervisors generally got the bigger impact, which will be somewhere between 7 and 10% through both increases. And of course, everybody got more steps.
Right.
And so it gives you a little farther to go as we try to work on that retention and
Right.
Our employee, we're kind of one of the few kind of industries out there that a lot of our services do and will continue to require a person.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so our people are our biggest asset in trying to take care of them and improve their development, and their compensation is important. So overall, we added 1 full-time position, but if you take out the 2 that came over from the EDC, we're actually less 1. So I do think we are still continuing to try to be very mindful with our positions and how we fund those. I've asked directors to be mindful when requesting for increases, that those are justified. It's harder to take care of the employees we have when we have more. So sometimes it's easier to invest in technology or equipment to make us more efficient so we can better take care of the employees on staff. So the other changes for city programs going forward this year is we did fund the senior property assistance program again. We didn't quite get that off the ground this last budget year, but we have the draft of our agreement now, and we'll be working with Helping Hands to fund that. So there again, that program is going to target low-income seniors and renovation assistance, things like new roofs, windows, property improvement. So unlike what Helping Hands currently does, we're wanting to target not so much quality of life things, but things that benefit the senior, but also benefit the house to make the
Yeah,
house
absolutely.
more sustainable going forward too.
Yeah.
So while Hutch Cares helps funds ramps and things like that, they're necessarily needed, they don't necessarily impact the value and the sustainability of the house going forward. And so as we try to work with the comprehensive plan and our housing issues, we wanted this program to invest in actual physical, tangible
And-
improvements to the house.
And Helping Hands is the one that's going to take
We're
charge
working
of
with
that,
them.
or you don't know yet?
We're
or-
working with them. I've talked to Yvonne, Hutch Care, sorry, not Helping Hands.
Oh, okay, Hutch Care, okay. And they will be required to give us a
Yes.
report and everything?
And so we're giving them the criteria that the person has to meet to be eligible for it, and we're giving them, that will be an interlocal agreement that comes to the council to approve.
Okay.
So staff has developed those criteria, and so we've finally gone through that, and we're starting to start the discussions with Hutch Cares now to make sure that they still want to do it, but they were definitely open to it when we approached them earlier last year.
Okay.
And so, like I said, I think it could be a good benefit to some of their existing programs, but also getting,
Yeah,
you know,
absolutely.
paint or roof for windows or
Yeah.
other systems
And
that
it will
need to.
help with the look of our city as
Right.
well.
We are still funding the utility payment assistance program. I think you've probably seen some of those Facebook announcements. We've partnered with Panhandle Community Services to offer utility assistance to low-income families. And so we have a event coming up next week where Panhandle Community Services will be on site here if you need help filling out, or if you're a low-income family that needs help with your utilities, they'll be here to help you fill and get qualified for that program. And then we have also budgeted an increase in the Opportunity Centers payment this
So
year.
happy for that.
And so they're going from $18,000 to $30,000 a year. And of course, inflation has hit them pretty significant with food costs going forward. And Councilman Uli did give them a one-time increase from his council allotment, but we're going to go ahead and take care of that.
I love
But they
that.
hadn't seen an increase in 4 or 5 years.
It's been a significant amount of time.
It's been many years, and
This is kind of one of those line items that just, you get used to.
Yeah.
It's just kind of tucked way, way back in there, and you don't see it. But I know they'll put that money to good use, so this
Yeah.
budget does still fund those 3 programs outside of, you know, what we do normally fund as well. When we talk about capital equipment, there are a total of 16 light-duty vehicles and trucks continue to be funded, and then some other additional equipment you will notice that our dumpsters are kind of going down. Have we seen a newer price? Have those come down in price yet? So they got up there to $1,200 a dumpster. And we were paying for about $550 a dumpster. So we budgeted for
They're $675.
so
Oh, wow.
they're better now, so we might get more than 60 dumpsters. Just fair warning that the number of dumpsters we get will be dependent upon the price at which we order them. I'm hoping they stay more reasonable, but
Yeah.
so
You know.
the new price is $675? Okay, good.
What would it cost
That's
to
an
rebuild?
improvement over the wall.
But some of those are rebuildable.
And we do rebuild them, we have I'd have to go double check, but there's $20,000, I think, in the line item to rebuild them. And a bottom, how much is a bottom now?
That just depends. They're still giving us new process.
And that's kind of tied to money,
You
but
send them off or they're done here?
we send, well, it depends on who can get to us and how that happens. We have, I think, several avenues to deal with that. That can be anywhere from it was about $150, but I think we're probably closer to $300 or $400. And so we've made lots of progress with the dumpsters in the last several years, and we definitely want to continue pushing that way. We'll see how that goes. Of course, you have already previously approved the new transfer trailer and truck so that we could get that on order. We still, we've got the side loader that's been on order for almost a year, We've got the vac truck that we ordered earlier to make sure that it would get there. I did get a quote on all of these light-duty vehicles that we approved earlier in this so we could get them ordered. Out of the 16 light-duty vehicles, all but 2 have an estimated delivery of 360 days. And so if we continue to see supply issues like that, we might have to revamp how and when we order vehicles and budget that just to make sure that we kind of keep that up. We are, in the last 3 budget cycles, we've been able to reduce almost $150,000 in maintenance costs out of our ongoing operating budget by replacing and keeping newer vehicles in the fleet. So it definitely does not pay to defer replacement of needed vehicles. And so that money's helped us offset a lot of our salary increases and health insurance, and so I definitely want to kind of keep that up since we're in that. And then you'll see the utility light-duty vehicles and stuff there. They have several things budgeted out of their operating budget, which aren't out of the equipment fund. The wastewater collection and water distribution are going to split a new crane, or used crane. I don't know if you've seen the crane out there at the well field. At one point, you probably saw it if you went out to Fritch or Buena Vista, as it was broken down on the side of the highway after their last. I am about 95% certain that their current crane is older than I am by quite a bit. So it's definitely a time for that. Of course, we've got the vacuum truck, which is budgeted as a capital construction item, and if you remember, we've already previously approved that. And then we approved a budget amendment to transfer those funds from our current budget into that capital equipment, so it'd be there when it got in, because that delivery is kind of still up in the air. So the wastewater treatment plant's got a skid steer in their operating budget. We mentioned that earlier. That skid steer is regularly used. If you don't know, that's what they use to load the sludge. And so it's not only is it time to be replaced, I think they will appreciate a slightly cleaner, newer unit. It's definitely hard worked. And so then we have quite a few capital projects that we're funding into next year as well. We talk about the 5-year CIP, which is the next item, but we call that a community investment program, and I still do believe that our capital improvements and infrastructure and facilities are an improvement and an investment in our community.
Absolutely.
And so I definitely like to think of it like that. In the general fund, we have 2 projects that are obligated, which we have to do, mainly because they're funded with grants. So we do have the Main Street Revitalization Grant. This is the second Main Street Revitalization Grant that we have, and that will replace most of the sidewalks in the 700 block, but especially those in front of Jalisco's where it's multi-leveled and just kind of crumbling. We'll also get a safety railing right there because the terrain is pretty high in some of those spots. And it will also replace all of the ADA ramps, the accessible ramps at the intersections at 7th and at 8th. And then we'll be tearing down 418 North Main Street, which is the building we bought to become the eventual pass-through park, connecting the new parking lot on Weatherly Street behind. And so then the projects that are funded that aren't grant, or I'm sorry, then I forgot Huber Park. So we did get a $400,000 grant for new inclusive play equipment in Huber Park. So that's a $400,000 grant with a $200,000 match, so it's 50-50 split. So we have that $200,000 budgeted for our portion of that. We've signed the agreements on that. Hopefully we'll be able to order that play equipment pretty soon. That should go in this spring, just in time for the new play equipment to be there for the summer. Then the projects that we're funding entirely with city funds is money for the 400 block of Main Street pass-through park. I didn't figure we'd be liked very much if we tore down a building and then left a big empty remnants, and then everybody'd be walking through it anyway. So we do have $350,000 budgeted for that. That'll include irrigation, landscaping, lighting, tables, a really nice asset to connect that parking lot, which I'm surprised how much those trees have already grown in just a year, but that sure is definitely a nice addition. We've also budgeted housing incentive land purchases to kind of continue to make sure that we're in a position to be able to support any housing development. Like we've kind of talked about, we are in the process with the EDC of working through that Yucca Estates and should have an incentive agreement for some housing project there in the next month or 2. So I am confident that we will see some new housing being built next year for the first time in a long time, so we're excited about that. We've budgeted $150,000 for entryway signage. We'll define that, later, exactly where that is, but that is one of the comp plan suggestions as we brand and work through that. So we'll be looking at that either on the south entrance, the west entrance, or we've talked about maybe doing something a little different depending on TxDOT requirements down in the cloverleaf, so that you've got a nice sign as you come around the cloverleaf. That has the highest traffic count, but we'll work through that, but that money is there. And then we've also funded a new splash pad in Buena Vista Park in year 1. We do have one planned for North Hughes Park in year 2. And so as we work through our park improvement plan and our sidewalks, trying to give people some places to spread out for some of that summer fun. And then a multi-year project, there is $75,000 to fund the Johnson Youth Center pool enhancement. So we're going to start trying to get some plans going for that. It'll take a little bit to develop that. And of course, we need to try to set construction around the summer season if we can. So, our plan there is when we redid the Johnson Park Youth Center, we didn't touch the original pool. So its plaster's all still the same, its shape's all still the same, its plumbing is still the same, the pump room is still the same. So we're starting to kind of have some issues with this. So this project is planned to kind of refinish. It's not replace it per se, but do some upgrades and some enhancements, take all the plaster down, replaster it, replumb it, and then probably do some sort of new entry, maybe work on some slides or some other features. It's
Maybe make it
a zero entry is what we call that, depending on what we've got space for and how we can do things. We do want to do a little change, but not massive changes. And so we're anticipating this to be about a $750,000 project, depending on what we decide. In the utility fund, we are continuing the Northwest Wellfield expansion. They actually started drilling our test holes today. So for the first time in 3 or 4 months, I can tell you that they're actually doing something and not that they plan to be there in 2 weeks.
Yeah.
So apparently 2 weeks has gotten here 12 weeks later, but they did start that today, so we'll be working through that going forward. We also have completion of the Main Street utility project that we started this year, 4th to 1st. We did open bids last week. We still got to score them and go through them. But it does look like we'll be within feasibility to do 4th to 1st, both the main and the alternates. We have the funds budgeted to do all of that. So we were hoping we'd be able to do that. It does look like we'll be able to do that. That'll probably be on the council, on next council meeting to approve that bid. We've also had money to engineer the next wastewater collection improvement, which would be the 2nd Street, which goes down Cobo and Bryan to CVS. Those are concrete lines as well. They have not collapsed yet.
Yeah.
And maybe we can get to them before they do, unlike the 4th to 1st Street, which we were just so close but not quite there on. But so next year we'll start the engineering, and then that would be a fiscal 2024 capital project. And then we also have funding to start engineering a new well in the north well field, the Stinnett well field. So you've got the northwest well field behind the original Stinnett well field, and so this would be a new well in the Stinnett well field, which would come down the main aqueduct into the city. Tough projects. I'm not going to read all of those. It's in the packet if they want to see it, but we have a chip seal project again. We do get better at that every year. I know nobody really just loves chip seals, but if you've driven down Evergreen lately, it's improved. It's improved. It looks pretty good, and it's definitely better. I know for the first week or two, those little bit of loose rocks is bad, but it's the coated chip really turns out a good project. And even these Hedgecote McGee that we did last year, I mean, they've turned into really, really improved streets. Curb and gutter next year, we're going to work on Hedgecote, like we talked about, from 10th Street to Valley, which will tie into our sidewalks, which include that same area, and then also around the park there on South Hughes Park. And of course, the continuation of 10th Street, the reconstruction project, which we have a meeting later this week, and then they'll start doing door-to-door with the businesses probably in the next 2 to 3 weeks as we get ready for that. And of course, the sidewalks and the curb and gutter, we're focusing on Hedgecote this year because it will tie in to the 10th Street project that we've got going. And that will give the elementary kids that like to walk from Paul Belton to South Hughes Park a pretty good, safe sidewalk all the way there. Questions? I think we've done a pretty good job. We're funding a lot of investment, keeping up with our replacements, taking care of our employees and our citizens by lowering the tax rate and keeping everything
Yep.
pretty well conservative and consistent. But I'll entertain any questions.
Good job, sir.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Garrett.
You're doing a good job.
Thank you, Mr. Spradlin, for your astute fiscal management over the last year. The city has benefited by it.
So,
Thank you.
do I go ahead and do the public? I mean,
Yeah.
Okay. So we will, at this time, open a public hearing. If anyone would like to speak. And since I see none, then we will close the public hearing.
Not very often we get to do a ton of capital and lower your taxes.
True. So at this time, I'll entertain a motion.
I move that ordinance O-009-22, making appropriations in support of the general operation of the city of Borger for the year beginning October 1st, 2022, and ending September the 30th, 2023, be approved on final reading.
Second.
And all in favor? And it passes. And we'll move on to item number 15?
14.
Or 14, sorry.
14.
Consider and take appropriate action to approve on final reading ordinance O-010-22, amending the City of Borger's fee schedule for the fiscal 2023 budget year. Mr. Spradlin.
So we talked about a few changes here. Like I said, the only one that most of the citizens will notice is the 50-cent increase in solid waste tip and tipping fee charges. The others are, we have a significant list of fire fees, and most of those are for our contract fire services, or where most of these come in is like if a commercial motor carrier has a hazmat spill as part of a wreck or somewhere else, we will charge the insurance to recoup our cost. And so that's what most of these are for. We haven't used any of these in the last 3 or 4 years, but if those prices aren't kept up, then we can't charge the new price. So you'll see some changes in the hourly personnel rates. Of course, we've increased salaries, so, what we charge for those need to go up. You'll see that personal protective equipment, the cost for bunker gear has gone up, just to meet, there again, that goes up with our cost. But that bunker gear is what is most likely to be ruined when responding to a hazmat incident. If you get a chemical on it and it eats through it, wear out, that gear can no longer be used, and it's a significant cost to the city. So there again, those are some of the few things that we do charge for. This is, not us charging when we come put out your fire, not us responding to a normal car wreck. These are things that are out of the ordinary. Normally, commercial motor vehicles, when someone is charging to make money with that transport, and so therefore we should be compensated for any loss that we have. The other big change you'll notice is in the Motorola portable radio. So with the new trunking public safety radio system we have, that new radio is quite a bit more expensive. In Parks and Rec, we have decreased the rental fee for the Cofield Community Building. So now that the dome is open, that's shifting some of our usage. So for county residents, the Cofield building's going down to $20 an hour with a $175 maximum. And for nonprofit organizations, that's $10 an hour with a $75 daily maximum. Security deposits and all of that are staying the same. In planning and development, the one change was on accessory buildings. And our previous fee structure, it was based on $200 or 200 square feet for an accessory structure needing or not needing a permit. Well, with the adoption of the new Unified Land Development Ordinance, that adopted a new square footage regulation for accessory structures. So that's what we're changing there. We're not changing the fee, it's just the square footage to be in line with the new ULDO. And then again, there's one small change in state law, mechanical contractor only registration fees. We used to require mechanical contractors to pay a registration fee. They were the only licensed contractors that could pay a fee, and I guess their lobby finally caught up and got the state to change that law. And so now they're in line with plumbing and electrical contractors, so we can still make them register, make sure that they've got insurance and that they are licensed and and bonded in the state to provide quality service to our citizens, but there's just no fee attached to it now. And then the same for the hourly rate for police, marked unit, and off-duty officers has increased to compensate with the increase in cost. And then, like I said, all the solid waste fees went up by just the 50 cents. And that's the impacts of the fee. So pretty minor, I think, but I'll answer any questions if you have any.
Anyone have anything? If not, then we'll entertain a motion.
Move to introduce on first reading ordinance O-010-22, amending the City of Borger Code of Ordinances, Chapter 1, General Provisions, Article 1.07, Fee Schedule.
I second.
All in favor? And it passes. Item 15, consider and take appropriate action on Resolution R-021-22, approving the fiscal year 2023 through 2027 Community Investment Program. Mr. Garrett, Mr.
So,
Spradlin.
we started doing this last year, doing our 5-year kind of strategic planning, capital outlay, and so this is the next phase of that. So we, funded 2022 last year, so we've added the funding for 2023 and then added 2027. So this is our 5-year guide. So what is included in 2023 has been budgeted for and approved, which we outlined in our presentation earlier.
Right.
And then 24 through 27 are projects that we've identified. Some of them are funded, some of them are not. And so as we make financial decisions going forward, this is supposed to give us, the guide work and the framework for our priorities and where we're going. So we've identified most projects that we need, whether we can fund them or not, so that we've got an idea of where we need to go. There's about a $17 million funding gap between what we've identified and what we can fund. And of course, the biggest part of that is a youth sports complex that we've talked about forever and ever and ever, and I think we all would like, but of course, as of right now, that $10 million project has no funding, but it's there because it's something the community and the council's identified as a possible project. Some of the street projects aren't completely funded, some of the fire projects aren't completely funded, but we can't work towards funding them if we don't have them identified. Keep in mind that the council makes those decisions each year on a 1-year basis as we go through the budget process, but that's why we want that 5-year plan to kind of give us an idea of where we're going and make sure that we make continuous incremental progress. But it's out there in the packet, it's on the website, there's a lot of good information in there if you're a nerdy government geek and would like to read it like me. But I won't say anything else, I'll leave that up to somebody to explore. But if you ever want to know what we've got planned,
It's all in there.
Yeah, this doesn't bind any future city council to any action.
yeah, the resolution, because the budget funded year 1, this resolution is just saying this is our plan and what we would like to try to do.
And if there's nothing else, then I'll entertain a motion.
I move to approve Resolution R-021-22, approving the fiscal year 2023 through 2027 Community Investment Program.
Second.
All in favor? And did you vote?
I did.
Oh, and it passes. Sorry, I didn't look at you fast enough. Item 16, consider and take appropriate action on an interlocal agreement for fire protection between the City of Borger and Hutchinson County. Mr. Spradlin.
So for many years, we have had a contract in place between the county and the city to provide fire protection, especially to those areas immediately adjacent to the city in the ETJ. This agreement, the only thing that's changed in it is the reimbursement required by the county. So we have increased that with the cost of everything going up from $60,000 a year to $63,000 a year. So this is just a $3,000 increase. But I'll entertain any questions that somebody might have for this. So this one's kind of important to me. As a kid, I remember my grandmother lived out on Westridge back before this was in place, and I can remember a house catching fire across the street and watch the city fire truck sit there and wait until Fritch got there, because at the time, Fritch had the fire protection contract and not the city of Borger. And I sat there and watched that house burn down, waiting for the truck to come all the way from Fritch. And so that, I think that just shows how far we've come in regional, countywide and regional cooperation over the years. But there's definitely good benefit to this.
And the county would pay us $63,000 whether there's a fire or not.
Right.
Okay, it's okay. It's a guaranteed contract.
Anyone else?
You said the average is about 7 events a year?
That's in Carson County.
That's in Carson County.
So we do go a little more than that out in this agreement. Of course, they will still respond to medical calls out there. And of course, a lot of that's good for our firefighters to keep proficient and trained. There aren't a lot of the fire calls are pretty negligible. And then, like I said, of course, wildfire calls, pretty much in the modern era, any wildfire anywhere in the county pretty much gets a response from every fire department. So, but this does offset some of our costs so that we don't charge them per fee. It's a little easier for us to budget what fixed revenue we know we're going to get and what expense they're going to have.
And this is looked at and if liked, renewed annually.
Correct. And so I did I didn't include it in the packet, but I provided the county with a 7-year cost comparison. And so this is in line, the 10%, this is a 5% increase, which is the average of our cost increase over the last 7 years since this contract was last updated.
Anyone else? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
I'll move to approve the interlocal agreement for fire protection between the city of Borger and Hutchinson County.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And it passes. And item 17, consider and take appropriate action to approve an interlocal automatic mutual aid agreement between the city of Borger and Carson County. Mr. Whistler.
Finally,
Hello, Council. So as Garrett alluded to earlier about the camaraderie and just the partnership with the region and the surrounding area, this is just expanding on that. What this is looking at is preemptively allowing us the ability to respond into Carson County to render aid for pretty much an all hazards, which is any emergency incident down into Carson County. For that same reason that Garrett talked about, we don't want to have to sit and wait for somebody to get on scene, assess it, and then call us when we're geographically located. We're probably going to be the quickest response unit to get there, being 24-hour paid fire departments. A lot of the people that are going to be impacted by any incident in this area we're talking about in Carson County very well could be Borger businesses, whether it's from a fire or car crash. It could be some of our local citizens. So we're just trying to provide expedient aid in a close proximity to where we are. So real quick, what an automatic mutual aid is, basically it just means we don't have to wait to be requested. We don't own the incident. The incident's still in Carson County. We're not annexing any part of Carson County or anything like that. It's just a partnership. It's a predetermined partnership for us to respond, the city of Borger. This area goes down basically to the 4-6's headquarters. It extends, it's kind of a weird little triangle. It extends, give me just a second here, about 4 miles to the, 4.5 miles to the east of Highway 207. And we had to find basically a riverbank that comes out about the equivalent of right by Graceland. There's a gate right just south of Graceland. If you follow that Cleachy Road straight down, the western boundary is Milner Road, and as Milner ends, it kind of continues to go straight down and just makes a nice little triangle in that area. That's the area where we looked at the statistics, and I believe I erroneously put the wrong information. Last year we had 7 calls. That was actually a 2021 full calendar year statistic. Granted, a few of those calls were pretty big, but as Mr. Spradling also stated, anymore when we get these big fires, it's all hands on deck, and we're just all in, together to help the community. So, but anyway, this is a $0. There's no fees because we have equal benefit in this to help provide this assistance to our residents. It also is a catalyst to allow Carson County to come up and help us out of Panhandle if we need anything. So just kind of in a nutshell, that's the gist of what we're asking for is permission to engage in this agreement with Carson County to provide that fire protection down in that area. As you know, part of that area we already do cover as far as around the industrial, Magic Plains Industrial Park. And then we've had old agreements in place for several years. That talked about wildfires on the northern part of the county, that we, for obvious reasons, with the predominant south winds, we have a huge interest in getting those in check pretty quick, so.
And we do the industrial park because we have that.
Is that industrial district
In the
contract?
industrial district.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And I was just curious, so even though Carson County kind of holds the responsibility, do y'all still, you still can go and, like, if it was a car accident and if you get there quicker, you can still respond, or?
And so, yeah, if we notify, if we're told about it and we get dispatched to it, because a lot of the time, cell phones still are in development. The goal with cell phones is that the phone knows where it is and it will route your 911 call up to the appropriate 911 center. That doesn't always work. A lot of times, we still get those calls into the Borger dispatch, in which case, the way things were, we would get the call, we would have to turn around and call Carson, they would have to send somebody, they need help, then they call us and we go out. And so we're cutting a lot of that
Yeah, really.
gibberish out of the way. We're just going, we're helping, we're doing our thing. Time it takes them to get out there most of the time. For most incidents, small ditch fires, medical, stuff like that. Of course, there's not a lot of houses, which is why our call volume's so low. Like I said, normally they're handled before anybody out of Carson County even gets there, normally. Then there's those 1 or 2 times a year that we're out for days, but on the big fires, so.
It sounds like a good deal.
But yeah, like I said, that's all that is with automatic mutual aid. It's just a predetermined agreement that,
And I guess dispatch will be, they'll understand that, they'll know to do all that. I
Yeah,
assume.
and we've got a good working relationship with Carson County, and we're pretty good at communicating back and forth when we've got something. And
Well, if we
we've
get a
got
good
their
addre-
channels.
If we get a good address, that's part of one of the reasons we upgraded the CAD, the computer-aided dispatch system, was the mapping capabilities in there. So if we get a good address, it provides them a lot better ways of visually seeing who's responsible for responding in those areas. And for us, the biggest benefit here is that the kind of the liability waivers, Carson County still, under a mutual aid agreement, if we respond without them asking, we're liable, even if it's in their county. So this kind of clarifies that they want us to come and that they will assume liability for the incident, even if we go first without them asking for it. And so that's kind of how we get it streamlined, because
Sort of like the Good Samaritan
So
rule.
they have
Right.
to agree to this as well.
Right, and tentatively, they've approved this. They're taking this before their county commissioners, I believe next week or the week after, for a counter signature to also agree on this.
it's been about a year.
Yeah. And this ties in with our Pantex agreements that we've been working on with their fire department and several other Pantex agreements. And Pantex is very involved in their community also, and has an actual fire medical response area outside of the plant. And so I think it was last year we ratified that agreement with Pantex DOE Fire EMS department also, so.
Sounds good.
County seat for Carson is Panhandle,
Yes.
and their dispatch is located in the county.
At the sheriff's department there off the highway in
The
Panhandle.
Sheriff's Department.
And most of the time in our area, prior to this discussion coming around, they were looking at Skellytown being responsible for anything on the east side of 207, and the city of Fritz being responsible for thing on the west side of 207. And don't get me wrong, I think they're more than capable, however,
It's a lot of distance.
proximity,
Yeah.
it's definitely in our best interest to intervene, and so.
Most of the time, they would both have to come to Borger to get to where they were going.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're gonna come out of the fire
And
station.
most
and wait and
likely
see
they'll
on
come
that.
to
to assemble
Borger,
the
not
crew for
Fritz, because they
Tuesday.
wouldn't come on 207.
Yeah, so this was just, honestly, it's just
Makes
trying to
more
make sense
sense.
of things, so,
Yeah.
and like I said, especially, most of the calls that we do get down there are, we get a few vehicle accidents. That fee schedule that y'all talked about earlier is something that we have actually filed for those incidents down on 207 for hazmat carriers. But like I said, it just gives us a little more foundation for managing all that. So. Any questions for me? Thank
No,
you.
Thank you so
sir.
much, Jason. If there's not, I'll entertain a motion.
Move to approve the interlocal automatic mutual aid agreement between the city of Borger and Carson County.
Second.
All in favor? I forget to look that way. And it passes. And we'll move to 18, consider and take appropriate action to adjourn.
I'll make a motion that we adjourn.
Second.
All in favor? And we are adjourned. Thank y'all so much for coming. Thank you, Judy, for coming.